Welcome to another short subject from educatevirtually.com. We're going to cover the DMAIC Process Improvement Success Criteria. This is our second video in a 5-part series. We've already covered the define phase. Now we're going to cover the measure phase. So let's get started. So phase 2, measure, the objectives. The key thing here is we have to establish the baseline of performance before we can make any changes to the process. We need to be able to tell if, when we implement something, did it make a difference or not, and hopefully it made a difference in the right direction. I'm sure that all of you had an opportunity to implement a solution to a problem, only to find out that it didn't work. Well, if we've established our baseline performance, we can measure if there's a difference between the current performance and that new improved performance from that implemented solution. We need to be able to do that. So we establish the baseline, which allows us to add information to the business case, and it gives us that point of reference when we go to measure the improvements. We need to understand the process that we're dealing with here in the measure phase, existing conditions, and what are the sources of the issues, the problems we're trying to solve. And then what are you going to measure? All right, where, when, how much? And we can use the critical to quality characteristics, the CTQ tree that we established in the define phase, to point us in the direction of measuring the right things that are important to our customers. Now the tools that we can use, and you're going to see this repeated often, data collection and sampling plans, we're pretty much going to use those in every phase going forward. All right. There's also some check sheets and some forms that we could use to make it easier to capture some of the information. The measurement system, we have to evaluate it from the standpoint of, do the gauges that we have give us consistent, repeatable measurements? And if we have visual inspections or evaluations, do we get consistent results from inspector to inspector? Which means if I look at it or you look at it, we both come up with the exact same conclusions. All right. Some other things: process FMEA, failure mode effects analysis, control charts, quality cost statements, histograms, Pareto, so we get some graphic pictures and representations of what our data actually looks like. This is all part of establishing that baseline of performance before we make any improvements. The deliverables. What are those main problems? We have to identify them. And then we have to understand the key measures, and we have to have them selected. So what are we going to look at from an input to a process, output, process steps? What are we actually going to measure all along our process? Completed measurement system evaluation. The important part here is, do we have repeatable, reproducible measurements, and are they at a resolution that allows us to detect if there's a difference or not? This is very important. Our current baseline performance has got to be established before we can move on to the next phases where we could identify things that we could implement for corrective actions. We have to be able to measure the improvement from the baseline. So things we want to have there would be, what's our yield, what's our cost, and what's our process signal levels. So that's the success criteria for the measure phase of DMAIC, which is phase 2.